Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Ohio Voices Informing Energy Choices, brought to you by the Black Environmental Leaders Association, powered by CommEN Strategies. Tonight, we're going to be talking about community emergency preparedness. With all of the talks on the ground about if the grid goes down or if you're experiencing a natural disaster, what do we need to do as communities to be prepared? As we know, there has been discrepancies, from these communities about how our government responds to these things. So today we just want to talk about what can we do as a community to prepare in these situations. And today we have Gwen Smith with us, who will be giving us a lot of information on this topic. So Gwen, if you can take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience, tell us a little bit about your background and your organization.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Celeste, for inviting me to be here, and thank you, BEL. Um, my name is Gwen Smith, and I'm Executive Director for Community Health Aligning Revitalization, Resilience, and Sustainability, also known as CHARS. And we are an environmental health organization in Atlanta, Georgia, and we are looking for solutions to environmental justice issues, as well as health inequities and educational, economic, and social inequities that exist in the African American and other marginalized communities. And we do that through a social determinant of health lens. Basically, anything in your natural or built environment that's impacting the health of a community is what we're looking at. And we're looking at how can we find solutions so that everyone can have access to health and well-being. So that's my organization, and we started in 2016 as a community organization, trying to address brownfields in the area and really looking at how the environment around us was impacting the health of the community. At that time, when I started this organization, I was working at the Georgia Department of Public Health. I worked there for a total of about 6 years. And I worked in the environmental health section, looking at chemical hazards in the community and also childhood lead poisoning. During that time, working for the Department of Public Health, I had an opportunity to take classes with the National Disaster Life Support Foundation, and they offered basic, core, and advanced disaster life support. And I also took classes with the City of Atlanta's Community Emergency Response Team, which falls up under Homeland Security. And so those things really opened my eyes to emergency preparedness. And one of the things I think that's brought me to where I am is the realization that the federal government, the state, all of that, they can do so much, but we, the community, we are not prepared to respond. We are only in a situation to react. And so we need to be prepared to respond. And that's what I learned from my experience with that. And so right now, that's my emergency preparedness background. As far as the rest of dealing with environmental justice, we're doing air monitoring in Atlanta, looking at how air quality is impacting Northwest and Southwest Atlanta, which is predominantly African American communities. Looking also at, we've done work with water, looking at water quality in the area and sampling water, as well as radon gas.
Great. And so this is so relevant to Ohio. The thing about Black environmental leaders is we are the sounding board for communities of color for connectivity around environmental justice issues, education. So when our members come to us and say, hey, in this political climate, we are concerned. When we have, a huge scandal like HB6 and have rolling blackouts in Columbus and different areas, and because there is resistance from our energy companies to update the grid. And as we move, more into solar and electric, these are things that Ohioans need to think about. And, it's our job as Black environmental leaders to ensure that in case there is an emergency, that our communities have this information from our experts and our partners that are in our bill network to ensure that they're prepared. So with that, could you just speak about, what types of things can families and communities do? What is the first step? Me and my family are saying, what can I do to prepare ourselves for, emergency?
Before I answer your question, I want to add one more thing that CHARS works on, and that is we have something called the Atlanta Repair Cafe, and there are repair cafes all over the world. In our repair cafe, we ask people to volunteer their skills to repair things in their community. And then we also ask people to bring things to be repaired for free. And I bring that up as I move to your question about what can we do to prepare for rolling blackouts as a community or as an individual. Well, first of all, you need to know who your neighbors are, because you can be as prepared as you want to be. And if nobody else is prepared, guess who they're going to come and take stuff from? It's going to be you. And so you need to prepare yourself individually. And we'll start with that, but you also need to think at a community level. So individually, the first thing I would recommend to anyone is to go to ready.gov, which is a government site, ready.gov, because it will tell you what you need to put together to protect yourself in your home. If you have a home business, it'll tell you what you need for your business and what you need to be thinking about. And that's the thing that you need to start with. And the next thing, as far as a rolling blackout, I would say, is you need to put an inventory of everything that you have that requires electricity. We really don't think about that. And if you do that, just do that inventory so that you'll know what it is. And then after you do that inventory, you'll beginning to think, oh, if I have a rolling blackout, these are all the things that I'm not going to be able to work. That's your cell phone, your refrigerator, all the things in your house, but other things also that you might want to use. So I would say start looking at what is the cost for rechargeable batteries, number one. Also, maybe start saving for a solar generator. Also, look at saving for portable generators or portable solar packs so that you can begin to have things like, if you're going to use your bigger solar generator, which can cost you from maybe like $600 up to $4,000, you might want to use that and save that for things to run your refrigerator or your stove or something like that. But a portable generator, you could then, if you have these smaller portable generators, you can use those for little things like your cell phones and your laptop and things like that to stay connected. They even have portable chargers that can connect to the back of a backpack. So if you're on the move, you've got that portable generator on your backpack always charging so that you have a way of staying in touch with people. Now, if you were to go to ready.gov, it's going to give you a list of things that you might need if you're going to take care of yourself. And you want to think about your kitchen items, you want to think about first aid kits, tools and supplies that you might need, and also documents. And you want to also think about how are you packing these things so that if it's a water comes in, that you have these things in a container that are sealed so that they don't get damaged. Now, you want to make sure that you have at least a gallon of water per person per day prepared so that you can make sure you have what you need for that. That's a very important thing as far as water is concerned. And for food, you want to have several days of food prepared. And many of us are used to using a microwave. You might not have a microwave available. You might not have a power supply strong enough to do a microwave. We used to have kitchen utensils that didn't require lots of gadgets. Like most of our can openers, they spin like this. We used to have a can opener that just was like a knife and you kind of ratchet it to go all the way around the can. You might want to look for some older supplied tools like that also. So those are some of the things that I would say that you might want to think about, as well as like an emergency radio also that can work from a crank. And when I start really thinking about things, I think like, okay, who is going to join? It's not called a two-way radio, ham radio or groups. There's ham radio groups all around the world. And as an individual, you might want to take the time to join a ham radio group that's in your community, because communications becomes key. When things go down, we have our cell phones, but guess what? You're not going to be able to use your cell phones because everybody's going to be pinging the cell towers. That's if the cell tower is still there. Because if the cell tower gets taken down in flooding or in high winds, how are you communicating with people? Now, there are also something called satellite phones that you can look at getting satellite phones for communication, but you still have to pay a lot of money, first of all, to buy the sat phone. And then you have to buy credits to use the satellite phone. And then you have to think, who owns that Starlink? So just check that out for yourself. But there are other companies, but these are things that we have to think about. And so ham radio is another way to stay, to get basic preparedness.
Thank you. I think it's so important, when you just said taking inventory of what things use electric. I think, we use electricity so ebb and flow that, we don't think about that, how many things are really running off electric and what are the necessities. Taking that inventory, I think is important, knowing the alternatives to source power in your home, whether you're using a electric generator, a solar generator, or a gas generator. And then, what does food look like? When you bring up the topic of communications and how important it is to stay connected, I want you to really dive into, you said know your neighbor. So what is the steps that a community, what's the first steps, me as a community member saying, hey, what do I need to do, in my 10 neighbors on my street to figure out, who lives who and how can we create a community plan?
Well, Charles is actually thinking about that. And Charles thinks very big level picture. You can't force somebody to like you. You can't force someone to talk to you. You can't force someone not to drive into their garage, pull the door down, and walk into their house. And so that's why I wanted to swing back around to the Repair Cafe. It is important to begin to build relationships and utilize the resources that we have in our community. In the South, there are a lot of churches everywhere, but people that the church in your community, the people that live in the community don't always go to that church. Sometimes people are coming from far away. Their parents grew up and that's the church that they grew up in, but they moved out. So these repair cafes, churches are a great place to have them, because now we're bringing people into a facility and getting to meet the people in that facility that they may not have a relationship with. And it's a safe space when you're doing a repair cafe. Someone's giving something away for free and helping you, and you're sharing a cup of coffee or tea or a donut while you're waiting your turn to have something repaired. You're building relationships. So this is a way for us to begin to know who each other are in our community. This is just an example, but I do press people to begin to figure out ways to do that. Community gardens are another way to do that, to begin to build who we are in our community and get to know who those people are. Because when an emergency happens, wouldn't it be nice to know who had what skills? Wouldn't it be nice to know who was a doctor in your community? We need to know who is on oxygen in our community and who is in a wheelchair. And just because someone has a different ability, so maybe they don't have their legs to use, you don't know if they're a physicist that understands how to put two wires together and make things work. We have to be able to rely on one another, because when you're in a marginalized community and the grid goes down, I know that before I started taking these emergency classes that I thought that They just didn't come help the African American communities and the poor communities because they don't care about us. That's not necessarily the truth. What I began to understand is there's a way and a system in which this works. First, who goes back up? The hospitals go back up first. So we're not going to be first. They're not going to come save us first. They're going to save the people who are dying and the people who can help us live. And so then they've got to be able to get to us. Well, where we are, we can't see the bigger picture because we can't leave where we are because trees are down, because we're flooded in. So by the time help comes to us, it could be 3 to 5 days. And this is why we have to depend on one another. This is why, if you have the opportunity to sign up to take a community emergency response team training that's offered usually through your fire department, which is paid for through Homeland Security and it's free, you will end up learning how to do a tourniquet, learning how to go house to house and turn off gas and the electrical stuff set around the homes so that people aren't being electrocuted and so the environment in whole is more safe. You will learn how to get people out of a home if it's safe for you to do that. And so we have to begin to utilize what is available to us for free and begin to mobilize within our community so that if a disaster happens, we can help one another. We need to go to ready.gov and look at the materials that are there so that we can determine slowly but surely. Right now, we need to start today. Every time you get a paycheck, go buy one thing that's on that list. Last month, that you see on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, these blankets that you can buy that puts the fire out in your house. And they'll tell you, sign up now, get 4 for $60 or whatever. Get one of those. Get one of those to take with you. Maybe you got to build a fire outside and you need to put it out quick for some reason. You can put that blanket over that, right? But also it's a way to help yourself in the midst of an emergency. So we just have to figure out a little bit at a time. We need to start building these things. I don't have everything for my home right now. My Go kit's not ready. I have a CERT Go kit because I took that class long time ago. I'm taking it again now. When the pandemic had happened, I had N95 masks because my CERT bag included them, along with a whole bunch of other things. It's not necessarily a go bag, but it is a good thing that I had to keep me going if I needed anything.
I think that it's so important that we continue to educate people on the resources that are out there. So, these resources are available everywhere. As you said, they are tied to federal homeland security. So, it's important for our members to know, contact your local fire station, introduce yourself to the people who would respond to you in an emergency. As we see, our firefighters do a number of things and just put out fires. They respond to medical attention. They do a number of things. And so, knowing the skills that they have, they may be a neighbor. So it's important to know those things. I think the biggest thing that I've heard you say more and more is, how do we find those things that bring community? When I think about, wildfires in California, how those communities had to pull together to help each other in a time of need, and how important it is for us to continue to build those community connections. And so one way could be, to your point, connecting at a church. Another way could be creating these programs within your community that allow people to build relation based upon their skills. Or even if it's just, you being a nosy neighbor, being the nosy neighbor in your neighborhood and just introducing yourself to people, and COVID kept us so isolated. And now that we're back outside and experiencing some of the same hardships, I think community building, and particularly, communities of color, is more essential than ever.
I would like to follow up on one more thing in reference to CERT. Again, CERT is Community Emergency Response Team. If you work for public health or the fire or the police or the hospital, you're considered a first responder. First responders get different benefits in an emergency So things that happen for first responders are, if there's a pandemic that pulls out, they get to get a shot first because they get to get inoculated first against whatever that virus is, because they need us to show up to help solve the problem. But they also know that you're not going to show up if your family's not taken care of. You're going to go be with your family instead. So not only do you get the shot, your family gets the shot, so that you will come and go to work because now you know that they're going to be okay. We in the general public don't know that that's a thing. So guess what? When you sign up for CERT after you take the class, they offer you the opportunity to become an active volunteer with CERT. What that means is they may call you up. First of all, in Atlanta, it gives you an opportunity for additional training. Additional training shows you what to do if there's an active shooting. They'll call you in so that if there is an emergency, you're in on it. They might have a big marathon. They might call in CERT trainers to be there as support, because now we know what to happen if an emergency happens. But that also puts us on their list of first responders. The other thing that you have with CERT, get several people in your community to go take the class. Then what you can do is you can come back in your community and offer to have a meeting in your community to share your knowledge with the rest of the community. I brought this out. This is an old book, but you end up getting a book that looks like this. I'm going to see if we can get it in. Looks like it's not going to. Oh, maybe. So this is a book, right? And it says Community Emergency Response Team, Basic Training Participation Manual. This book right here tells you how to put a tourniquet on. This book here tells you what you need to pack for your emergency kit. It tells you how to suppress small fires. There's all kinds of information. It tells you how to do a splint, how to evacuate people from homes, what the homes look like that you should go in. You get to take this information and share it. Imagine if you're in your community, if you have a community of 1,000 people, if you had 10 people in that community that were CERT trained, that could make the difference and it could save lives. And it's free. We like free.
We love free. And it's, our tax dollars at work. And so, we need to take advantage and know the things that are out there for us to take advantage of as communities. So I know we're ending out about our time, and this has been such an informative conversation. Lastly, I just want you to talk about how people can support your work, how we can spread this word about emergency preparedness in communities, how we can get more people signed up for CERT, how can people get involved?
So the first thing that I'm going to say is about being signed up for CERT. Go to your state emergency management agency / Homeland Security website. See if it's there. If it's not there, go to your city. Okay, go to your city website for the fire department and see if CERT is up under there. Find out about the classes and register. The second thing that I'm going to tell you to do is look up under your emergency management agency and see if they have a local emergency planning committee. There should be one. If not, tell them you want to know when theirs is going to start, and that try to identify a community organization that represents you that can be on the committee, because they are responsible for understanding which facilities are tier 2 facilities in your community that could have a disaster, and making sure that we understand what we need to do to be prepared. If we know the disaster that can happen, then maybe we can prepare for it in advance. And we don't always think about that. And then third, I'm going to say, go to repaircafe.com or Google or .org, repaircafe.org, or Google Fix-It Cafes, and see about starting a repair cafe or a Fix-It Cafe in your community. Costs about $60 to do a repair cafe, and they send you a manual with forms and everything that you need to set one up. All you have to do at that point is get people to volunteer. and get people to bring their own tools because you might not have the money. And then go to the library and use the library as the location to do it. So it's free. So it's very low entry, but it's an opportunity to start building community within your community. Don't try to make it so that you're that repair cafe for the state or you're the repair cafe for the city. Do it for your community at a community level so that you can begin to, one, not throw things away. That's all we do. And when we throw things away, we have to go buy another thing. And that impacts the environment, that like increases carbon, when actually we just don't know how to fix things anymore. Learn how to fix your things, because it's going to come a point when we're going to need those things and we're not going to be able to buy one. We might not have the money. We might not be able to get to the store to get one. The supply chain might be down. We need to learn how to fix our own stuff. And if we can't fix it, we need to be able to barter with someone else our skills. Thank you.
Thank you again so much. Please go out and try to create these plans in your community. Please refer to Bill's website, as we'll be rolling out a lot of community preparedness education over the next year. So thanks again for watching, and we can't wait to see you next time.